You're currently watching the Sales Master series, and we are now looking at an example of how the entire game authoring framework could actually help us position and pitch products to different clients of ours. In the last video, we did understand what we mean by a framework and why are we calling the product that we built more as a framework. So what I would want to do is to quickly show that as an example here, to see how you would be in a position to relate to it, clearly, right? So let's take the example of HMM, whose large clientele is the automotive, sector, right? So in the automotive sector, I could, go to Maruti, Honda, Toyota, like what HMM, currently does. And specifically in this space, let's take one single, use case, such as a dealer, training program where I would be in a position to offer, training to dealers constantly. I'm basing this on my experience as a customer who has walked into multiple dealer outlets to shortlist cars for my own personal use. And I'm basing this example, on that. Right. So if there's anything which is technically wrong, I think you might want to just ignore that, but then please try and understand the concept that I'm trying to present here. So in this case where we're talking about, dealer, training, there are three important or four important, components. There is a customer who has a specific need. Then there is a product, with a certain set of features. Then I have my competitors, products or alternatives, which are available in the same space, right? And then I have my dealer parameters. I would say dealer schemes, which I would need to be aware of, that keeps changing on a monthly basis, right? So these are four elements that I would need to train my sales folks on, where they would need to understand customer needs, be able to ask the right kind of questions and ask the right kind of questions to understand the customer need, know the products really well in terms of its capability and its features, right? And what we call the FAB model, right, which is your features, advantages, and benefits, right? I have had personal experiences where I've gone to a dealer where I've test driven a car where the person who is accompanying me did not really know certain technical aspects, and was not able to really articulate the features of the product really well, right? So we do have our own personal experiences of sorts when we have visited multiple dealers for our own personal car purchases. What's also quite key and important is for the dealer to understand various other products in the similar segment and how is it in comparison to the product that the company is selling, right? So that is extremely important for the dealer, the salesperson to understand. And finally, the dealer schemes in terms of what discounts they could offer, what they cannot, and how do they really close the sale. Those are aspects which are extremely important. So now let's go back and then understand this in terms of the framework, right? So if it is automotive, now let's say what is the context. So the context here is a showroom. So I could have a physical showroom created. Then what's the product? I could have car models of the brand which is created. I could have I could simulate a salesperson which is the player, and I could simulate multiple customers, right? So these are the things that we typically need for us to have a virtual simulation and a learning environment created for this. So let me just take you and show you a quick example. It need not be exactly relevant, but these are things that would help you relate to a little better. So this is a game that we have created for one of our clients called Aristocrat. So imagine that this is the customer. It's a 3D customer who could be any persona who is actually walking into the dealer outlet. So here we would be able to create a virtual walkthrough and a lookalike, of a dealer outlet. And pretty much if we are creating a dealer outlet for one single car company, it pretty much resembles the same for most, right? These are large, wide, open spaces where you have multiple, products, such as the car station. So that's about it, right? It's a quite easy 3D model that we would be in a position to create. So now I could have, let's say, a reception, because any dealer typically has a reception standpoint, reception in the front, and I could go and then register myself at the reception, and then the receptionist would go ahead and then allocate a particular salesperson to me, right? I mean, this is the process that I'm aware of. So here we would be able to simulate a similar such interaction. So here I could now go ahead and then interact with, let us say, the salesperson, and here the salesperson is asking certain questions and I would need to respond. So the entire branched conversation between a receptionist and a salesperson, can be modeled. Now the salesperson is, can now take me, and lead me to, let us say, one of the, dealer, salesperson, and the receptionist could, give me a walkthrough, and then she could actually leave from there, right? So these are things that's possible. And similarly, when I visited the Toyota showroom, I've seen the history of Toyota, the quality. I think it's called the QFT, right? So, what is the quality philosophy? All of that is presented. Now, what we would be in a position to do is to, let me just quickly change this. And what we have done right now is to create a product experience zone. And this particular company is a casino, slot, machine company. So what we have done is to remodel our entire product experience zone to actually have the casino models. So imagine that instead of these, casino models that you see right here, I'm just going to go back. Yeah, sorry. So imagine if you could, sorry, here. So instead of these slot machines, that you see here, we would be in a position to actually create cars, right there. So we could have the basic models of the cars, standing out there. And now the salesperson could walk the player, or the customer to a specific model, and then start explaining that particular model. Interestingly, what we would be in a position to do is to create multiple customer personas. So in a typical training program that I'm assuming an HMM would do, where they do role-playing scenarios to help the new guys, the new sales guy, understand how to make a deal, how to open a conversation, how to close the deal. Here what could interestingly happen is we could generate 50 such customer profiles with differing needs, different challenges, differing objections, and see how the individual actually responds. So let me show that in live action here. So this is the product experience zone that we created for ESAB, which is again a product manufacturing company. So instead of these 3D products, of cutting and welding that you see here, I could have models of cars created, right? So this could be a Brezza, this could be an XL6. If it's a Maruti, then what are the other models, right? So it could be a Swift, so on and so forth, right? So each of these things that you see here could be representing different models, and now the salesperson gets to completely get trained, and you would have let us say a trainer who will walk them through and help them understand. So there are two interesting aspects that we could build. We could build what is called as the practice mode, where in the practice mode it is a guided mode where the learner is allowed to make a lot of mistakes, and then subsequently we actually take them to the play mode where there is no guidance, and you would be in a position to do that entire sales, and we could virtually track as to how many sales that the person has actually converted and made, right? Have they been able to identify the need correctly? Have they been able to handle objections correctly? Have they been able to demonstrate the product correctly? Have they been able to talk about the features, advantages, and benefits? And have they been able to close the deal, right? So what we could do is the entire Spanko model, we will be able to look and measure which part of the Spanko model a particular learner is pretty strong on, right? And from here we could give them more practices on the areas that they are pretty weak, and that will help them really strengthen their overall capability and skill sets, right? And this is where we are coming back to the concepts behind this. From an overall assessment, standpoint, this is called as an evidence-centered, design, right? Um, so what is an evidence-centered design? What is it that I would like to measure, in a sales guy? Sorry, just forgive my, spellings because I'm doing it a little fast. So what is it that I would like to understand from a sales guy? I want to understand, is product knowledge, ability to demonstrate, um, understand the need of the customer, then it could be close the deal, and objection handling, right? So let's assume that these are our key criteria that we would like to measure in a sales guy. What we would do is to create multiple scenarios within the game. For product knowledge, we create multiple customer questions on the product and see how the player actually responds. So similarly, there would be multiple such tasks which are created in the game, and these tasks are nothing but evidences for us. And depending upon how the player is interacting with the evidence, right, we would be in a position to make inference about their skills, knowledge, identity, value, and ethics. So the reason why these are called as epistemic games is because what you see here, which is your entire SKIVE parameters, which is your skills, knowledge, identity, value, and ethics, in a short form called as a SKIVE, is what represents an epistemic frame, of a particular profession, which is a doctor thinks, acts, behaves in a particular fashion, right? So that's the reason why we have a house surgeon model for uh, practicing doctors, where they would need to go ahead and then work with a senior doctor so that they are in a better position to think, act, behave like doctors. And similarly, lawyers also have an apprenticeship model where they work with senior lawyers to exactly understand how do they interpret criminal jurisprudence, how do they really look at property suits, or for that matter, how does their senior lawyer actually think, act, and behave. So similarly, every profession for that matter has a very unique way of operating, which has its own set of skills, knowledge, identity, value, and ethics which are required for that particular profession. So anybody who is new into that particular profession, so if I'm joining a car dealership and I'm a new guy, I would what the training research actually tells us is that I would need to really think, act, behave like an other successful sales rep in the dealership for me to actually get into that line of business. So that is what is called as an epistemic frame, right? Come to think of it, this is the classical internship or apprenticeship model that organizations have. It's just that we are using a methodology to measure that in games. So typically what we do is, whenever, let's assume, we engage with Maruti, the first thing that we would do is to ask them what is it that you would like to measure, or what is it that you would like to monitor, so that this mode of training is actually keeping the return on investment in mind, right? So I mean, I'm a great believer of trying to measure the ROI. And now, if you really look at an instructor-led training program or an e-learning program, in contrast, you really don't have measurements that could really tell you that the program was successful. Yeah, you do have what's called as a pre and post assessment, and these are typically what is called as an ex situ modes of measurement. But what's important is to actually measure learning when the learning takes place. So that's the philosophy of an evidence-centered design, where we are measuring learning as the learning is taking place, and hence this is a very effective way of learning when done really, really well, right? So in a quick nutshell, for our HMM colleagues, what I've shown you right now as a quick recap is, we did talk about what's called as a framework, and why is it a framework, right? It has to be universal and it has to be scalable. And we said, typically from a universality standpoint, I simulate a context of a particular environment, and then I create a set of tasks and activities which represents the way in which work is done in that particular division, right? What I've shown you right now with an example is where we would be in a position to simulate virtual workspaces and help simulate activities which are scalable, it is universal, and you would be able to train multiple people at the same time. What's also interesting is this could definitely be a hybrid model, right? It need not be only the digital learning space. So this is more of a constant refresher. You could run competitions, and it would help organization capture data and validate their own findings that they see about salespeople with in conjunction to the sales numbers that they have on the floor, right? It's quite scientific in that sense. Okay, thank you so much, and I hope you've been able to now relate to as a different use case as to why this particular gaming framework allows us to actually build games which are multi-purpose to different organizational needs. Thank you.